When you take Cardano, Bitcoin, and Midnight together, I think that's all you ever need. You have Bitcoin is like the ultimate trust and value layer. It's the digital gold of our industry. You have Cardano as the ultimate computation layer, and then you'll have Midnight as the privacy and identity layer of the system. And when you put those together, you have all the generations represented, basically.
What's up, Ida Gang? Welcome into Dapp Central, your home for everything blockchain and crypto. I'm your host here, Fareed. To my right, man needs no introduction, Charles.
Good to see you, man. How you been?
I'm doing okay. I'm doing better after hearing you speak on stage. What's been, day number one like for you here at the official Midnight Summit?
So first off, like this morning, you ran into me. I was drinking coffee before we did some filming, and you're like, "Hey, we got to get an interview." I was like, "Oh man, we missed you." So first, I'm sorry about that. And I'm glad we were able to actually sit down.
Thank
And
you.
it's a beautiful place. Yeah, I always love your content. With respect to Midnight, it's 6 years into the making, and we're finally launching, and it's just so much fun. It's a four-stage launch, and I got up on stage and I brought up a slide that said when midnight. Everybody's like, yay, we're actually going to talk about the launch of the token, launch of the network. So there's really four gates when you launch a network like this, given its size, scope, and scale. Because if you look at the numbers with the glacier drop and the scavenger hunt, it's well more than 1 million users. It's hard to tell because there's so many wallets and the wallets don't map one to one. But we think it's well more than 1 million based upon all the signals we've seen. So just like my video came out, the Midnight Whiteboard video is already 1.3 million views and it's less than a week. So it's really a lot of people. So anyway, the first stage is liquidity. So all those tokens have to be processed and get into everybody's hands. They have to be able to redeem them. So December 8th, that starts. And basically what liquidity is going to do is not only going to get the tokens, they can trade them on exchanges and dexes and all these other things. And what's cool is it creates a price signal. And so then people really start caring about it at night because it's on CoinMarketCap. It's a real thing. It's not a hypothetical thing. So at the same time, the testnet's still around. It's going to go through a major hard fork here in just a little bit, and that's going to be for the RTM. So basically, the testnet that we expect to be the federated mainnet. So the very next era, which will occur in the first quarter of 2026, will turn on a federated mainnet. Some of the nodes run by us. Some of the nodes run by large companies, one of which is a Fortune 5. So that's really fun. And that will be basically a production system where you can run dApps and do things, but it's a safe environment. And so all those people who have been building, the more than 100 partners that have been building on Midnight, can now start deploying their dApps, use them in production. Your Night can start basically interfacing with that. Okay, then a little bit afterwards, about another quarter, the incentivized testnet launches, and that testnet is about getting all the SPOs who want to run Midnight and for reals in an environment, and then hard fork that network for the final consensus algorithm for mainnet. So we've been working on a technology called Jultian. We have a liveness and safety proof for it. We've done all this hard work to kind of get it fixed up. And so 5,000 transactions per second, sub-second block time. It's state-of-the-art technology. It's really one of the fastest and best BFT protocols ever developed, but it's never been deployed before on Parity substrate. And so it would be irresponsible just to kind of launch that out. Also, stake pool operators have to know how to run that. So we're going to take that, hard fork the ITN to have that. Once it runs for a little bit and it's stable, then we hard fork the mainnet, and then that's kind of stage 4 of the launch plan. So that'll occur in the following quarter after the ITN quarter. And then after all four are complete, you have an end-to-end full network. Compact has been fully realized. You have a large dApp ecosystem, a very large holder base, tier 1 exchange listings, a lot of wonderful partners in the Fortune 10, all the way down to Web3 partners, a lot of integrations. And then it starts turning on the capacity exchange, the hybrid dApp model, and these other things. So then Midnight wakes up and it goes from a Cardano Midnight situation to a Midnight Ethereum, Midnight Solana, Midnight Bitcoin, Midnight Avalanche, Midnight BNB, and so forth, Midnight XRP. It brings privacy to all those different systems. And then really it's just a game of hybrid applications. Let's go and make some deals on the Web3 side and bring a lot of those users and liquidity into the Midnight network. And let's talk around how Midnight can make their networks better. And they can pay in their currencies, whether it be Ether or Sol or ADA or Bitcoin or whatever the heck they care to pay in, and it gets consumed as a capacity. The other really cool thing about Midnight is this idea of bringing the Web 2 payment model in with Web 3. So in Web 3, you have to have a token to use the system. But in Web 2, like Google and Facebook and all these other things, you use it for free. You don't pay anything up front to use it, which is why they scale to billions of users so quickly. And users are used to that freemium experience and they don't like paying. So it's one of the barriers to entry for Web3 to actually reach the mainstream. Well, the dual token model of a Night and Dust means that if you hold Night, you can generate a fuel. You don't have to use that personally. With a capacity exchange, you can sell it to other people in exchange for their Ether, their Bitcoin, or whatever, and generate that stream. Or as a Dapp builder, if you have Night, your users, you can delegate your dust generation to them and they can use your Dapp for free without having a token. That's an entirely new thing in the cryptocurrency space. And it's a very different type of model that we're used to, but I think it's going to be great for user acquisition. And what that translates to is a lot of traditional Dapp builders, application builders from the Web 2 world, the mobile world, will come in through Midnight because it's the one that doesn't require the user to have a cryptocurrency to be able to use the system, which is super, super cool and super fun. So it's really exciting. The cooperative economics, the capacity exchange, all the proof stuff. And we have some incredible announcements. We kind of wanted to keep our powder somewhat dry, even though we had all this amazing stuff we announced here and tomorrow with all the partners. And when we launch Federated Mainnet, we're going to have some crazy, crazy announcements with that, which I couldn't believe. Taking a sidebar, the Midnight Foundation is the partner that I always wanted to have. I wake up every day, I call Fahmy, we talk to each other. I say, who would be a good partner to go and get? And he said, this so and so. And I said, let's go get him. Let's go figure it out. And he calls them, and then it turns out he gets the partnership. And you saw that with Google Cloud or all these other things. And what's so cool about it is when you have that mindset and that mentality of I'm accountable to KPIs, I want to see the network grow, I want to make Web3 deals, I want to make Web2 deals, and they're working with scarce resources, yet they can move mountains with that. That's a partnership that's enduring and long lasting. And so, from our perspective, we always wish we had this in Cardano, and we're really glad that we have it at Midnight, and it's carrying a lot of weight. The other side of it is when they do an integration, it's not just a Midnight integration, it's also a Cardano integration. So they're the ones who will bring the oracles and the stable coins and the bridges, and we'll make sure we take care of Cardano with that as a courtesy to where we came from and what Cardano's done for the Midnight ecosystem.
You gave a wonderful speech earlier. So did Fahmy. You guys spoke about Bitcoin laying down the foundation, ETH bringing along programmability, Cardano, Solana, all these sort of third generation cryptocurrencies bringing along scalability, throughput, etc. And we're now at that fourth generation. And so with that, what are going to be your priorities? Because as a founder, I'm sure you've learned a lot, right? Things that have gone well, maybe things that you could have done better from other experiences. So with Midnight, knowing what you know now, what's going to be your priorities moving forward in the coming months?
Well, there's been a lot of things that we just massively innovated on, like this four-stage launch model, launch with liquidity in a safe place that's easy to list. We didn't have that with Cardano. It was extremely hard to build that out. So it was a long curve to high liquidity. Launch your smart contract model before you launch the network so you can build all your partners. And then when you launch your smart contracts, you have a year or two of refinements. Had we done that, then we would have had 2023 smart contract capabilities of Cardano right in 2021. And we probably would have kicked Solana's butt with that. So we did that with Midnight. Have a much more graceful way of bringing your infrastructure providers on board. I think the ITM was tremendously successful for Cardano, and a lot of those people are still stake pool operators. We learned from that, we refined, we iterated, and I think there's going to be even better way for them to come on board. But then most importantly, live in a cooperative equilibrium. Create a reality where no one has any incentive to compete with you. Everybody feels like you're a layer two to everybody, and it's very welcoming. Getting out of that sub-zero mindset where your entire marketing apparatus is our technology is better, come to our side of the aisle, to we're here to make your life easier and allow you to do new things your network doesn't do, and we can extend your network and you can pay in that network's token. This is a very different way of approaching people. It's a much friendlier way. So we're welcome at Solana events. We went to Bitcoin 2025. We'll be at Bitcoin 2026. We love the XRP community, and there's a lot of amazing people there, and we think we bring a lot to the table for them. which allows them to get yield. I mean, if you think about the Ripple company, I think they're sitting on like 40, $50 billion worth of XRP. You get a 5% yield for those guys, they're as profitable as Tether. It's a really good life to be in, and also that means they can just hold their XRP, and it doesn't create that sale pressure. That's good for their ecosystem and for the ledger. So there's a lot there that if you just learn to work with people, it can make things so much better. And that's a lesson we didn't learn the right way with Cardano. Governance was another big one. We got on-chain governance, I think, into a good place in Cardano, but it was a brutal, horribly difficult thing. And also institutional governance. There were things I did wrong, and nobody really could hold me accountable. There were a lot of things Emergo did wrong, and no one can hold them accountable. There's still no accountability at the CF, nor will there ever be, and they hide behind bureaucracy. And it really frustrates people because they say, look, you were given all this money to do all these things for us, and we believed in you, we invested in ADA, we want this ecosystem to be successful. Please just pick up the phone and figure out a path to make these things work. So what we did with Midnight is we were much smarter about the institutions and their programming so that they have to be collaborative by nature. We have a phenomenal relationship with the Midnight Foundation. All of the code governance is going to be done at the Linux Foundation. That's where it was supposed to be done for Cardano, but when the foundation took it, they built a model where input-output would be forbidden to participate. This was one of the reasons why Intersect exists, because when they hired Dirk, they couldn't get the LFDT to come on board, but we have it with Midnight. So just everything from the project governance to how the foundation works, the incentive model, the idea of a KPI-driven development model, the cooperative economics, the tighter launch where we can do like a 5-year launch plan in 9 months instead of 5 years. And then also starting with utility first, applications first, and saying, let's build real things that solve real problems for real people. Let's deploy that on a test net. Let's push that through, and let's get that into production. I really enjoy that, and Midnight's a lot of fun. The borrowing of technology is another differentiator too. There's Zcash DNA in Midnight through Halo 2. There's Jolteon is from Aptos and Concordium, and that's been amazing. We have Parity Substrate from the Polkadot ecosystem. We have a ton of Cardano DNA. There's probably more than 24 blockchain projects that are represented in the code and in the science of Midnight. So we always ask the fundamental question: is this a core USP of the product, or is this a necessary evil to get the product to market? If it's a core USP, we'll build it. If it's a necessary evil, let's borrow, and then let's iterate over time. So that pragmatism of being able to bring in the best-in-class technology from around the ecosystem and get away from that NIMBYism of, not my backyard, not invented here, that's a very big cultural shift. And it took a radical realignment, because we were always like, well, we can build it better. We're smarter. We're for the formal methods people, these types of things. And we're like, yeah, that's true, but is that a core USP of the product? They say, no. Well, sorry, guys, you're gonna have to borrow something. Let's do that to take it to market. And it wasn't easy for me. Remember, Gavin Wood was one of the guys that pushed me out of Ethereum. He told Vitalik it's him or me. So imagine my feelings of like Parity Substrate is one of the things that'll clip a year off of our time to market. And I'm like, all right, well, if that's really the truth, let's go for it. Let's find a way to make it work. And now we're friends, and now we work together. So you had to put ego aside, and you had to put the rivalries of the past aside and say, look, for the greater good of the ecosystem, the fiduciaries, and for the people that are here, let's find a way to work together and push this forward.
And I want to first off give you kudos and the entire Midnight Foundation kudos, because I, as a creator, can see that you guys are results focused. How quickly you guys have came out with this summit, how organized you guys have been. And there's sort of been an onboarding for creators as well. Obviously, I can't speak from a developer's perspective, but you guys even had a hackathon today, right? So it's like you guys are doing what you need to be doing to cater to make sure that everybody who's going to be a stakeholder within the ecosystem has what they need to, number one, understand Midnight and Night Dust and sort of the entire ecosystem, but then number two, to actually contribute directly towards it. And so that said, There's been a lot of talk about privacy, and you actually brought up Zcash, and I believe the founder was actually in attendance here,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's just amazing to see all of the walls and the tribalism.
Well, I mean, Zuko and I went to the same college. We were both went to C Boulder. He was a little ahead of me, but I've known him for a long time. He's a good guy.
That was just surprising for me to see, because again, there's a lot of tribalism within this
Yeah.
space. And so the fact that we're seeing other communities showing up, like you said, the new whiteboard video already over 1 million views, there is an appetite there. But I'd like to maybe take this a little bit more personally. Was there a particular or singular experience that you had that made you say, this is why we need midnight?
I think the AI revolution has made it so blatantly clear to everybody that it's inescapable. So it used to be that, your privacy was an abstract concept, and unless you were particularly targeted, you didn't really think too much about it. But now everybody's getting targeted because what AI is doing is it's hoovering up not only your data, but your likeness and your output. So let's say you're Snoop Dogg and you have all your music out there. Well, the AI hoovers it up, and then suddenly you listen on the radio and you hear a song that sounds like you wrote it in your voice, but you're not being paid for that. In fact, I think he's suing over this right now. Last time I talked to Champ, they're not very very happy about it. And it's the same when you look at any creative medium. Artists are being ripped off wholesale. Coders are feeling the pressure and the pain. They write all this code for the company, and then suddenly there's like a digital twin of them writing code, and they're not being paid for it. So they say, wait a minute, that's not fair. It's like me as a person, you've created a digital twin, and you're taking my value, and you have it, not me. Well, the only reason the Fortune 10 can do this is because you gave them all your data.
Mm.
You gave them all your voices and your emails and your geotag data for where you travel, your pictures. And the AI can learn all of that over time. And by learning all that, it basically can perfectly replicate your creative output.
Mhm.
And people realize this is existential now because it's not just, wow, something sounds like me. It's, I no longer have a job. This is pretty bad. So you have to have your privacy back. You have to have your data back. You have to have your identity back. The other issue is it's becoming harder and harder to know who's real and who's not real. You see this on internet comments. There was a famous thing I was fighting with a bot on Twitter, and I'll take a mulligan. I didn't realize it was a bot account when I first saw it, and sometimes I reply back, and you never can these days. The comments are so bad. But more than 70% of all traffic on the internet is bots.
Wow.
And on social networks, it can be up to 90% of all of your engagement are bots. That's problematic. And even on the whiteboard video we released, it's hard to know what the ratio of real to bots are. You have to use a lot of analytics to kind of filter all that stuff out. So it's probably 60-40 or 70-30. And that's just challenging. So I'd like to live in a world where I know I'm dealing with a human. So zero knowledge is perfect because you can prove humanity, you can prove properties about yourself, but you don't have to reveal who you actually are, where you live, or any of these other things. And I think selective disclosure is the only way to make this new future work, where when you're working with a bot, you're not working with a bot. The other thing is that these bots, these agents, they give you so many tools for commerce.
Mhm.
I said this in my whiteboard video where I said, okay, I went to the Amazon, I wanted to buy a hat. I spent probably a good 10 to 15 hours looking at hats
Wow.
because I'm thinking I'm going to be in the Amazon for 10 days. I do not want to be in the Amazon and get horribly sunburned and mosquitoes tear me apart and all this other stuff. I want a really good hat. But apparently nobody has solved the jungle hat problem. It's like you make $1 billion, you solve this jungle hat problem. I would have paid $50 for a subject matter expert agent to take my personal data, go into the web, and come back and tell me what hat to buy.
Mhm.
I would have paid for that. When you think about this stuff, you say, okay, how do I buy that agent? How do I parameterize that agent? How do I give it my data without compromising my data to get it to do something for me? Whether I'm buying a car or buying a computer or buying that jungle hat, the majority of commerce by 2035 will be agentic in its
Wow.
nature. This is why Coinbase created the X.402 protocol. It's why Google and Meta are scared shitless about it. And they have such large AI labs. Meta's putting $65 billion a year because they know if the majority of commerce is agentic, ads don't work anymore. Because ads are for you and for me. And you see it and click it. But how do you influence a bot?
Okay.
It's just going there, it's slipping and slipping in, it's going to do its own thing. So advertising has to change. So there's a multi-trillion dollar disruption in e-commerce and advertising, and that's going to be blockchain based. Blockchain on the payment, blockchain on the data, blockchain on the agent parameterization. And when you do stuff, you're going to have an agent marketplace and you're going to buy custom agents that are tuned specifically for what you need. Or you can create an announcement saying, like, I need a bot that's been programmed to know everything about indie games or homebrew games for Nintendo NES or something like that. I'm willing to offer $50 for whoever creates it. They have to prove without giving you the knowledge up front that they've done that.
Mhm.
That's a zero knowledge proof. So things like Midnight, they're not just about, oh, I give you your privacy. They're more about, I'm allowing you to reason about over the next 5, 10 years the consequences of having your privacy back and having you own your data as
Mhm.
opposed to Google owning your data, Microsoft owning your data. So in many ways, I think it's probably the most useful chain I've ever built because it just does it for everyone everywhere, including Cardano. And what's really cool is when you take Cardano, Bitcoin, and Midnight together, I think that's all you ever need. It's I call it the crypto triumvirate. You have Bitcoin is like the ultimate trust and value layers, the digital gold of our industry. You have Cardano as the ultimate computation layer, and then you'll have Midnight as the privacy and identity layer of the system. And when you put those together, you have all the generations represented, basically. And there's enough value there to just take us home. So that's also something I'm very excited about is exploring that crypto triumvirate with Bitcoin DeFi touching both Cardano and Midnight and just continuing to build up and extend that model that we have.
Thank you, Charles. Again, a wealth of knowledge. I want to be fully respectful of your time. And so as we get ready to close out, for anyone who's maybe on the fence about Midnight, can you give them some parting words?
Well, just join the Discord, the Midnight Discord. Go to midnight.network, read the documentation, and also sign up as an ambassador if you get passionate about it. The thing about Midnight is there's nothing to hide. Midnight ironically, because it's a privacy coin, it has been very transparent from the very beginning about what the mission is, what we want to accomplish, the distribution. Just give all the tokens away, let other people have it. No VCs, no Ponzonomics. So, really, if you go and you look at the culture and the documentation, you find a lot of tired, burnt out people that are very frustrated with the way the cryptocurrency markets have been going. They're tired of being lied to. They're tired of being manipulated. They're tired of the Ponzonomics. They're tired of the broken promises. And they just want to reset, which is why I think there's so much passion and excitement. I mean, the first 14 days of the scavenger hunt replicated the first 2.5 years of Bitcoin's mining, in terms of computational effort, which is an extraordinary thing if you think about it. So you don't get that level of participation and adoption, and you don't get that level of passion unless there's a there. And the fact that you give up nothing by being a Midnight community member. I'm not saying leave Bitcoin. I'm not saying leave Cardano, leave Ethereum. I'm saying let's take what you have and let's make what you have better. So by building this bridge, now you know for the rest of time, you get your sovereignty back, you get your privacy back, and you can make that system shine. So just go to midnight.network, take a look at the documentation, join the community, join the Discord, become an ambassador, and get to know everybody, get to know your neighbors. And I think that's ultimately going to create a really awesome movement.
Thank you as always, Charles. I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.